And one of the things we do in that, and this is even when I'm counseling someone individually who I know has PTSD and moral injury, I will have them do what's called a two-way prayer log. And what a two-way prayer log, many times in counseling, people understand, the counselor will say, well, you need to journal your feelings, you need to journal, what you're thinking, what's happening on during the day. A two-way prayer log is a little bit different. What you do is, whenever you do your quiet time, and we encourage them to have a daily quiet time to get into God's Word daily, but then also to write out their prayer about everything that's going on with them emotionally, what they're learning from God's Word, but maybe what's happening with them emotionally, what's going on with them in their day-to-day life, to just write all of that down. That's the first part. The second part is, how do they imagine God would answer them? And then to write that down as well. And what that helps the person do, so many times when someone has experienced trauma, whether it's PTSD or moral injury, they are very self-focused. My paranoia, my security, my safety, my decisions that I made that were bad, my corruption, my unforgiveness. And what the second part of the two-part prayer journal does is it helps them get out of their own head. It helps them focus outside themselves, look at their situation, maybe as God may look at it. And it helps them maybe to see God's perspective, when so far they have been only thinking their perspective. And then that actually helps them to understand, or maybe begin to understand, that there's another way of looking at everything that they've been going through. And God may have a bigger plan.
I really like that. And it's something that I'm going to try out, because I have never done it. Think of what God's response will be to my prayer. And I think that's really deep, and I would really encourage everyone to try it out. It might not work for you, but it's worth trying, because if maybe my belief, and you can correct me, it has helped a lot of people as of right now. And then I think it's going to help everyone if we give it a try. And one of the things that your framework focuses heavily on, restoring the broken rather than just managing symptoms. What are the essential pillars required to rebuild a life that someone truly feels is worth living after it has been shattered?
Well, as I said before, first you have to find that safe place to tell your story. Then you need to start looking at the situation outside of yourself, and that's finding God's perspective. And from there, you need to examine forgiveness. Why does God allow evil in the world? And if you can see from that God's perspective, then it's easier to begin to focus on that forgiveness that God offers. And then you also need to begin to focus on self-forgiveness, because so many times what's holding the individual back is the fact that they don't forgive themselves, and they feel like that what they've done is so awful that there's no way God could forgive them, so they're not going to forgive themselves either. And so begin to walking down that path. And then one of the final things that you do is there is a rededication to God. And as part of that rededication is also reconfirming with your family and your friends. Because when a person is suffering from moral injury, what they do is they distance themselves from their faith, from their family, and from their friends for two different reasons. First of all, they're afraid that if everything that they've done gets known, they're afraid they're going to be seen as a monster and that they're rejected. Secondly, they're afraid that if they spend too much time with their family and friends, then the corruption and the evil that is inside them will infect their family and friends. And so they distance themselves from them. And it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy where they're actually the person pushing away their family and friends, when their family and friends would like nothing more than to be with them. But they think, I'm being noble, I can't possibly do this because I don't want to corrupt my wife, I don't want to corrupt my children. And so one of the final things that happens is a rededication to God, but also a renewing of a relationship with your family and your friends.